What if I told you that all you need to build a ripped, muscular body was one all-out set to failure per muscle group, done once or twice a week? If you like the sound of that, then let me introduce a training method that exploded in popularity in the early 70s. It's called high-intensity training. This is the training system that famous bodybuilders like Mike Mentzer and Dorian Yates used to build their legendary physiques. And high-intensity training was also used in the legendary Colorado experiment, which saw its participants gain up to 63 pounds of muscle in only 28 days. Now, I'm sure you're saying that this all sounds a little bit too good to be true, so let's break down high-intensity training from a scientific perspective and separate fact from fiction so we can find out if the system is as effective as it seems to be on the surface, and how you can use high-intensity training to build more muscle faster. To start off, we need a quick bodybuilding history lesson. Back in the golden age of bodybuilding, high-volume training dominated the sport, thanks to legends like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbu. I'm sure by now we've all heard of Arnold's famous double-split training routine, which had the Austrian oak training twice a day, 6 days a week, doing an insane 60 to 90 sets of volume per muscle group per week. But despite high volume training being widely popular at the time, not everybody was on board with this style of training. There were some prominent bodybuilders who viewed high volume training as a waste of time and something that could even prevent you from building muscle optimally. Enter Arthur Jones, the globe-trotting adventurer who lived by the motto, younger women, faster planes, and bigger crocodiles, which from now on is going to be the motto I live my life by. Arthur was a man of many achievements, such as having a total of 6 wives across his lifetime, owning his own private airport, keeping an 18-foot saltwater crocodile named Gormak as a pet, founding Nautilus, a company that designed and manufactured resistance training machines, and the achievement most relevant to today's video, he invented the high-intensity training system. Since Arthur Jones invented high-intensity training back in 1973, a lot of other versions have popped up, like the ones championed by Mike Mentzer and Dorian Yates. And even though all these systems have their subtle differences, there are 3 main principles across all versions of high-intensity training that stay consistent. The first is the emphasis on training to failure, and sometimes even beyond failure. In Arthur Jones's Nautilus Bulletin number 2, he wrote this: "A set is properly finished only when additional movement is utterly impossible. Curl until you can't even bend your arms. Squat until you can't start up from the low position. Press until you cannot move the bar away from your shoulders or your chest." Mike Mentzer also shared a similar message when he said this in one of his videos: "As long as you go to 100, you pass through every possible growth stimulation point. That's why we keep stressing training to failure. It's not going to hurt you. It's necessary so that you know you stimulated growth." Advocates of high-intensity training believe that when you're training to absolute muscular failure, doing a large number of sets per workout is not only unnecessary, but could prove to be counterproductive. And this leads us nicely into the second principle of high-intensity training, which is performing a low number of sets per exercise, typically only 1. In one of his books, Arthur Jones said, "How many sets of the exercise? 1. Additional sets usually serve no purpose and may produce a state of overtraining with some subjects." And Dorian Yates has gone on record saying, "1 set at extreme intensity does the muscle building job." And finally, the third principle of high intensity training is to train with a very low frequency. This means you're doing very few workouts each week and each month. Arthur Jones's answer to the question of how many weekly workouts are best was, not more than 2, and some people will produce much better results from only 1 weekly workout. More is not always better, and in the case of exercise is usually worse. And Mike Mentzer recommended that you have 4 to 5 days of rest in between every single training session. Mentzer has even said that a number of his personal training clients who were only training once every 10 to 14 days were seeing amazing results. All 3 of these major principles of high-intensity training are closely linked. Advocates of high-intensity training believe that when you're training at a high intensity, such as when you're training to absolute muscular failure, your body can only handle so much volume, and this is why they recommend only 1 set be performed per workout per body part. Also, they say when you're training to failure, you can only train so often, hence the recommendation to only train once every 3 to 6 days. If you guys are liking the video and want me to do more on the golden age of bodybuilding, then leave this video a like, subscribe, and comment golden age down below. So that's what high-intensity training is all about. But is it really the superior way to train for muscle and strength development, as Jones, Mentzer, and Yates have claimed? Well, over the years, there have been some truly amazing accounts of individuals using versions of high-intensity training to build incredible amounts of muscle in very short periods of time. One of the most famous accounts is called the Colorado experiment. Conducted by Arthur Jones in 1973, this study showcased a participant who managed to gain 63 pounds of muscle in just 28 days. Under the supervision of Dr. Elliot Please, Casey Viator, an already established bodybuilder, became the main focus of the study. Casey was recognized as the youngest AAU Mr. America winner at only 19 years old. While Casey was at the center of the experiment, Arthur Jones wasn't just observing, he also took part. Casey trained every other day for an average of 33 minutes for 28 days, using Jones's high-intensity training system, while Arthur followed the same training schedule but only trained for 22 days. During this period, both men followed a high-calorie, high-protein diet and ate up to 6 times a day. The program they followed was said to have looked like this. They executed one set for each exercise and they took it to absolute muscular failure, following the reps listed. The men would perform these exercises back to back with zero rest until they were done the full list. And they used Nautilus machines for all the exercises. And what were the results? Well, Casey packed on an impressive 63.21 pounds of muscle, and Arthur didn't fare too badly himself, putting on 15.44 pounds of muscle. Now you might be saying this is sounding too good to be true, and honestly, that was my first thought when I heard about this experiment as well. However, some additional details make the story slightly more believable. The first thing is that Casey had elite muscle building genetics. And importantly, he had lost about 50 pounds of muscle in the months leading up to the experiment due to a severe allergic reaction to a tetanus shot. So most of the muscle that Casey allegedly built during the Colorado experiment was muscle that he had lost just months earlier, meaning that he was able to take advantage of the phenomenon known as muscle memory. And I'm sure everyone in the comments right now is yelling, what about steroids? Well, Ellington Darden, who was Nautilus's director of research during this time, said that Casey was under close watch 24/7 to ensure no performance-enhancing drugs were used. And Arthur Jones himself was not in favor of steroids, saying that the use of so-called growth drugs is neither necessary nor desirable. With all this being said, it's still important to remember that Arthur had a lot to gain from this experiment going well, as any positive results could be used as evidence to show how effective his Nautilus machines and his high-intensity training system were, allowing him to increase the reach of his brand and sell more workout machines and training books. But the Colorado experiment isn't the only noteworthy story of impressive gains being made with high-intensity training. Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek, also adopted a training plan similar to Arthur's, and he managed to pack on 34 pounds of muscle in just 4 weeks using the system. To read all about his story, you can check out the article that I linked down below. And aside from these two accounts, we of course have bodybuilding legends like Mike Mentzer and Dorian Yates, who claim to have used their versions of high-intensity training to produce amazing results both for themselves and for the people they have coached. So I'm sure after hearing all these accounts of individuals getting amazing results with high intensity training, I'm sure you're just about ready to throw all your posters of Arnold in the trash, hop on eBay to bid for a classic Nautilus training machine, and bow down to your new god, Arthur Jones. But don't roll out the prayer mats just yet, because we're about to take a look at what modern day bodybuilding science has to say about high intensity training. Okay, so for you to understand the issues with high intensity training, you need to learn about something called the stimulus to fatigue ratio. The stimulus to fatigue ratio is something critical when you're training for muscle growth and strength development. See, every set you do in the gym offers a muscle building stimulus, signaling your muscles to grow and adapt. The more of this stimulus you have, the more muscle growth you can achieve, provided that you recover adequately. However, each set also brings some amount of systemic fatigue. Systemic fatigue is a general term that encompasses things like central nervous system fatigue, connective tissue fatigue, mental exhaustion, and the buildup of stress hormones like cortisol. Without proper rest, systemic fatigue will build up, eventually leading to a state of overtraining. And when you're overtrained, your body can't make further gains, and you'll need a period of reduced training volumes or a short break from training altogether to recover. So with all this being said, to maximize muscle growth and to grow muscle quickly, you should train in such a way that allows you to maximize the amount of muscle building stimulus that you're getting while minimizing the amount of systemic fatigue that you're getting. And this is where high intensity training first fails. Research like this indicates that training to absolute failure provides only marginally more of a muscle and strength building stimulus than training within 0 to 3 reps of failure. However, the slight increase in stimulus that you get from training to absolute muscular failure comes with significantly more systemic fatigue. With this being the case, consistently training to absolute failure yields excessive fatigue for minimal benefit. Instead, by working mostly within 0 to 3 reps of failure, you can achieve a similar amount of stimulus but with much less fatigue. This approach allows for more frequent, high-volume training, which has been shown time and time again to be a driver for muscle growth, especially in trained individuals. This 2016 meta-analysis done by Brad Schoenfeld and colleagues showed that there is a dose-response relationship between weekly resistance training volumes and increases in muscle mass. stimulus, essentially meaning that the more you train, the more you'll grow, at least up to a point. This 2022 systematic review found that on average, men with at least a year of resistance training experience saw similar muscle growth results when training with 12 to 20 sets of volume per muscle group per week as they did when they trained with 20 plus sets of weekly training volume per muscle group per week. These results suggest that there is an upper limit to how much weekly training volume can be beneficial for muscle building, though we don't exactly know what that upper limit is and will most likely be different for everyone. So we know how much volume we need to do per week, but how many workouts per week should we split that into? Well, looking at this 2016 systematic review and meta-analysis, once again done by Brad Schoenfeld and colleagues, it says that according to the 10 studies they reviewed, training each muscle group at least twice a week seems to be more effective for stimulating muscle growth than training each muscle group only once per week. So to sum things up, according to modern day science, performing 12 to 20 hard-working sets within 0 to 3 reps of failure per major muscle group, split across 2 to 3 training sessions a week, seems to be the best way for males with at least 1 year of resistance training experience to train for muscle growth. Now, all of this obviously flies in the face of the 3 principles of high-intensity training that say for the best results, you should perform only 1 to 2 sets per muscle group to failure, split across 1 to maybe 2 sessions per week. So does that mean that high-intensity training is absolute nonsense? Not exactly. While high-intensity training looks like it might not be the optimal way for somewhat experienced lifters to build muscle, it could be the perfect way for somewhat experienced lifters to train if they're short on time. This is because, as we covered, training to absolute failure does cause a lot more fatigue per set than non-failure training, meaning that you can't do as many sets per workout or per week. But if you're short on time, you won't be able to train with as many sets per week or per workout anyways, so you'll gladly trade a bunch more fatigue per set for a little bit more muscle building stimulus. So for those of you with over a year of training experience, I've taken the best parts of high intensity training and high volume training and put them together to create this 3-day-a-week full body minimalist high intensity training program with workouts that should only take you around 45 minutes to complete. You can download the program 100% for free with the link in the description of this video. And if you're newer to training or want to train at home with 0 equipment required, then go check out my 17-week at-home superhero body origins training plan, link also down below. If you like this video, you need to check out the other side of the coin and watch my video on Arnold's old school training that covers everything you need to know about high volume training. I'll see you there.